did
What is the
protect Tamil
comparison
women.
of the Tigers compared to where the average person could say, who would they be comparable to? You said Hamas earlier. Who would you compare the Tigers to? Or who would the media compare them to?
I mean, the Tigers had their own, like, police system, court system. You know, they were like, they had their own, you know, area that they controlled. They built communities and irrigation, and, you know, they were kind of across the board in schools, and they were very organized, and they were super disciplined. You know, like, everyone swore to chastity, like, you know, people didn't celibacy, and nobody, you know, the men and women didn't mix, and they were highly disciplined. They carried cyanide, that if they're caught, they die on the spot. Like, they were pretty ruthless in their discipline. So I don't know who I would compare it to. But they were very, very...
Who was a leader? Vellupillai?
Yeah, Prabhakaran. But at the same time, they were ruthless in terms of... My dad was more like the intellectual... you know, he brought the intellectual layer to the cause, you know, and he was educated, and he was trained by the PLO as well in the 70s. But he studied all revolutions around the world. So my dad was very, like, international in that sense. You know, he really cared about what was happening all across the world and wanted to shape the revolution that was modern and forward-thinking. My dad was a visionary. And he wanted everything to be very forward-thinking, as well as respecting this ancient Tamil culture. Tamil is one of the oldest, well, it is the oldest language in the world. And, you know, the war started on the back of the Sri Lankan Prime Minister. Yeah, so it's the oldest living language in the world that's still in use.
Spoken by 78 million people?
Yeah, so in Sri Lanka, we are thought to have the original version of Tamil called Senthamil, and the Indian version is almost like a dialect, you know, that comes from the original Tamil. And historically, they haven't explained how this is so, you know, but maybe in the future that will be revealed. But my dad wrote the Traditional Homelands of the Tamil People, a reference book that kind of dives into these kind of things and connecting some dots. But the oldest language in Sri Lanka in the 50s and 60s, the respect for that wasn't there. So the government basically got rid of all the Tamil signs in the streets. They deleted Tamil as one of the languages in Sri Lanka. They made all the government documents in Sinhalese. They pulled it from schools. And this is why the war started. So they branded all the Sri Lankan women with hot tar, like Sinhalese letters. And, you know, so it was very like, it did come out of this like language. It did stem from, the first conflict stems from that, because that was the first thing they attacked, you know, the language. And then slowly the identity, but the language was the Tamil people's identity, you know. And they were very...
Politically, it says here, the self-styled National Liberation Organization with primary goal of establishing an independent Tamil state. Tamil nationalism was the primary basis of its ideology, striving for a democratic secular state that is based on socialism. Its leader, Vellupillai, was influenced by Indian freedom fighters such as Subhas Chandra Bose. The organization denied being a separationist movement and saw itself as fighting for self-determination and restoration of sovereignty in what it recognized as Tamil homeland. Although most Tigers were Hindus, the LTTE was an avowedly secular organization. Religion did not play any significant part in its ideology. The founder criticized what he saw as the oppressive feature of the traditional Hindu Tamil society, such as the caste system and gender equality. They presented itself as a revolutionary movement seeking widespread change within Tamil society. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
we fought the homeland we were fighting for was called Elam. And Elam, and you being Iranian, like that's Elamites. So the Sri Lankan Tamils, they're different. So even though the South Indian continent Tamils, the Dravidians, and the Sri Lankan Tamils connect, they also had interjected some sort of connection to Elam and Elamites. And we, our homeland, we named it Elam, and that's what we were fighting for. So my dad's movement, EROS, stands for Elam, Revolutionary Organization of Students. And so that's why he had the intellectual sort of background to his thing. But I was always very interested in where they got this Elam word from and why they decided to name our homeland Elam. But people fought and died, and Elam, I think, is also like the son of Shem or grandson of Shem, in a biblical sense. And if you look at Mesopotamia and the first city, it's called Ur, and apparently Abraham's dad comes from this place, Ur, and he was called Terah. And so if you look at the word Ur, all of our land is called that. Like every city, it's basically, it means city in Tamil. And if you look at South India, the map of South India now, and zoom in, every city, every town has the word Ur at the end, U-R. And it's still there, and it's still called that. And so there's definite, like a huge connection between, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, and all of these regions and the Tamil language. If you go to Australia and you look at the red rocks there, that is named Ul-Ur, and Ur, it means the same. It means inside land is what it means in Tamil. Ul is inside, Ur is land. And so, the language is there, and it's also in, I think they say that it's 30% of Aramaic, the language that Jesus Christ spoke.
I speak that language.
Do you?
Fluently.
Well, then there'd be loads of connections between.
Yeah, I just looked it up, Rob. Can you type in exactly what I texted you? This is very interesting.
Yeah, so when they speak about
Elam was a long-lasting ancient civilization just to the east of Mesopotamia in what is now southwest Iran. Elam was centered in the far west and southwest of what is now modern-day Iran, stretching from the lowlands of what is now Khuzestan and Elam province, as well as a small part of southern Iraq. Wow.
Yeah, so now we should have the real conversation, because the elimination of the Tamil people in Sri Lanka and the fact that I speak about that, and that's how I came up speaking about it. In fact, that's what incentivized me to become a musician, to talk about it. There is some sort of a reason, And now we're living in a time where we're doing DNA tests, and all of these companies, Google, the thing that I spoke against, is now the owner of DNA, like 23andMe or whatever it's called, and Ancestry.com. BlackRock owns that now. So wherever you're coming from, whatever your story is, whether, my dad started a revolution and, did like sustainable development about farms and did this and this, that, whatever, or I'm a musician coming from all these battles with people like Jay-Z and whatever, Oprah, wherever I'm coming, everything leads to this one point, and the point is now we're living through a time, the entire global DNA system is owned by two companies. We're in the middle of a war where we're discussing who the chosen people are and what their DNA is, who rightly belongs to this land, who rightly was there 2,000 years ago, what is this about? Is this, again, more money? Is this about oil underneath Gaza? Is this about a religious thing where Jesus' second coming takes place? It's really interesting. Or are we talking about who the Messiah is and all of this? And I think this is a really, to me, it's like, I don't know, fast forwarding into where we're about to go is I think, pretty interesting in that sense. That Tamil language, to me, I always thought that even though the Sri Lankan Tamils at the time made up like 2 million people, once upon a time we occupied like 75% of the population in Sri Lanka, and then we were invaded by the Portuguese, the Dutch and the British, and our population shrank to 20%. And so during the filming of that documentary, I was there during the census report in year 2000, and they didn't allow the Tamils to fill out the census report, right? So I knew that, or in 2000, I knew that they were going to wipe those people out and there'd be no accountability. And 10 years, it took me 10 years to become a musician, become famous, say that, and that happening, And so initially I made this documentary because I was like, I got to document that they're going to not include the Tamils. 10 years later, change the narrative and say, no, there were no Tamils. Everyone's been accounted for when they didn't get to fill the census report. And I just feel like, but there's even more, to discuss about why these people are important. And I don't know, it's just even becoming Christian recently, I'm just discovering that, And the Tamil people in India, they have this like theory, which some people deem as a conspiracy theory, but they have this theory where Jesus spoke Tamil on the cross, and they have clips of Mel Gibson's movie where Mel Gibson says in an interview that he says, I wanted to really keep the language true to what they would speak or what Jesus would have spoken 2,000 years ago. So he researched Aramaic and made sure that he, got it as close as possible. But if you listen to the words, and he says the word appa means father in Tamil. And so when he calls out on the cross in the scenes, he says appa, and that means father. And he says to Mary, or whoever was with Mary in that shot, he says parango, which means look after them. And the last word, which is on Google, it says Elam Elome Sabatani, which is the last sentence spoken by Jesus on the cross. In Tamil, that means everything is done, give me death. But in English, in the Western civilization, and the way I've always known about it is, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do, or something.
Yeah, it says, my God, why have you forsaken me?
No. So in Tamil, Elam means everything. Elom. Yeah. So the Elame is one word. It's not Eli Lame. It's Elam.
Allah. I don't, if
Elame is everything.
Now you got to get me
and
to listen to this.
Sabathani is Savathani, which means give me death. Like, give me the end, And that is what happened. if he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? There'd be an answer, or there'd be a next question. But he says, give me death, and then it ends. And that's why that's the last sentence. But I'm not a theology expert, but there is much to learn from the Tamil language and Aramaic language and Hebrew, and therefore, I think, and also Egyptian, and this is why I think, yes, it was important to preserve the Tamil language and not give in the 50s, 60s.
In these uncertain times, if there's anything we need people to believe the future looks bright. So if you've heard about me saying this mission to you, we're on a mission to get 1 million people to wear this gear, and this is what we're doing. If you buy one of these hats, there's a category of buying one hat, getting the second one free. If you haven't yet worn this gear publicly, go ahead and test it out. Buy some of the gear, wear it in public, and see how many people will stop by and say, you also watch Valuetainment? You also follow PBD Podcast? I do too. Place your order. Go to vtmerch.com, click on the link above or below, place your order, and represent the VT and the PBD Podcast gear.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.